Late at night, in a quiet house, a child lies in bed, eyes wide open, staring into the dark. They hear the low hum of the TV from the living room, their parents laughing, talking, a thin line of light glowing under the door, and they just lie there, waiting. Because in other houses, this is the part where the door opens. Someone steps in, pulls the blanket up, asks a simple question, "You asleep yet?" But here, that door never opens. Nobody hit this kid. Nobody screamed at them. Nothing bad happened that you could even put a name to, but that's the whole point. You see, some trauma leaves marks you can point right to, but other wounds, they're completely invisible. They don't come from what was done to you. They come from what was missing. Psychology calls this emotional neglect, the pain of a child who was never abused, just never seen. From the outside, this child grows up into someone almost suspiciously fine. They look calm, independent, never complain. They say, "I'm fine," so fast. They actually believe it themselves. But underneath, there's a quiet fear. A fear that if they ever open up, if they ever let out the full weight of what they carry, the person across from them will just turn away. Exactly like everyone always did. And if you're listening to this right now, odds are you might recognize a piece of yourself in there. Or take another everyday moment. An 8-year-old boy bursts through the front door, coming home from school, clutching a drawing in his hands. He spent his entire lunch break working on it, every single line, picking out every color. He just can't wait to show someone. His dad is staring at his phone. His mom is stuck in a work meeting on her laptop. The boy stands right there in the doorway, holding the drawing out. 1 minute passes, 2 minutes, then 3. Nobody looks up. He doesn't cry. He just slowly lowers his arms. On his way back to his room, he drops the drawing into the recycling bin, softly, not making a sound. Back in 1975, Dr. Edward Tronick over at Harvard ran this classic psychology study called the still face experiment. Moms were asked to completely stop responding and hold a totally blank face toward their babies. And what blew everyone away was this. In less than 2 minutes without getting a reaction, those babies started panicking, crying, and eventually, they just shut down, giving up out of sheer exhaustion. A bruise leaves a mark. A screaming match leaves a memory. But indifference? It crushes a child's nervous system just as hard as violence does. It whispers one quiet message: my existence just doesn't matter. According to John Bowlby's attachment theory, a child reaching out for connection isn't being needy, it's raw survival. But when that hand reaches out and finds nothing but empty air, the brain rewires itself around a whole new rule. Don't need anyone. Needing people only leads to heartbreak. Over time, as that rule hardens, it turns into a personality armor. Most of the time, an emotionally neglected child grows up wearing one of 4 masks. See if any of these sound familiar. 1. The strong one. Her phone is full of contacts. Whenever anyone needs help, she's the one they call. But at 2 in the morning, when everything collapses, she sits all alone in the dark. Not because she doesn't trust her friends. It's because something much older is running in her head. Burdening people is wrong. Asking for help just gives them the power to let you down. She became strong. Not by choice, but because she had to be. 2. The achiever. This guy is a bit different. Growing up, he figured out a rule. When he just sat there quietly, he was invisible. But when he came in first, when he brought home a medal, his parents' eyes would finally land on him for a second. So he made a quiet deal with himself. I only matter when I'm useful. I'm only lovable when I'm impressive. As an adult, he chases work like a man dying of thirst in the desert. He works nonstop, never knowing how to slow down. But he never gets why that thirst never goes away, because deep down, it was never success he was thirsty for. It was the feeling of being loved for who he is, not what he achieves. 3. The people pleaser. She walks into a room and instantly reads the energy of everyone in it. She knows her boss is upset before he even opens his mouth. She sands down her edges, shrinks her own ego, and turns into whatever shape the moment needs, all serving one silent order: don't let them leave. People call her sweet, thoughtful, and she is. But behind that warmth is an exhausting 24/7 mental math that never turns off. Am I doing okay? Did I just do something that made them pull away? 4. The invisible one. And the last one, the hardest to spot. He lives a small life, keeps his dreams modest, stays in the background. Not because he lacks talent, but because he ran the math way back when he was a kid. If I try and nobody notices, that'll destroy me. But if I don't even try in the first place, nobody can hurt me. The world calls it a lack of ambition. It isn't. It's a person who learned that hope has a price tag they just can't afford anymore. 4 different people, 4 different masks. But at 3 in the morning, when the masks come off, they all carry the exact same exhaustion. Exhausted from holding the world together all day, while the child inside keeps listening for a door that never opens. But here's the weirdest part of the whole thing. That exact wound accidentally builds a superpower. A kid who knows nobody is coming to catch them learns to read the room fast, real fast. They watch facial expressions. They measure the cold tone in a voice. They know the exact moment the energy in the house is about to blow up. That constant hyper-awareness ends up sharpening their mirror neurons into a blade. They develop what you could call biological empathy, meaning when you're in pain, they literally feel it moving through their own body. They grow into people with insanely high EQ. They catch your pain before you even figure out how to say it out loud. They see you falling apart right behind that fake smile. They're the very first person you want to call when your whole world collapses. But what's the cost? They can aim all that empathy outward while being completely blind to themselves. They absorb everybody else's emotions until they lose the signal on their own. They suffer so quietly that it looks just like strength. And that's the cruelest tragedy of it all. The person most gifted at making everyone else feel understood is so often the one who's never been understood at all. If you see yourself anywhere in these stories, I've got something important to tell you. This isn't where it ends. Renowned neuroscientist Norman Doidge proved through neuroplasticity that the human brain isn't a slab of concrete. It's alive. It adapts. Every path, carved out by absence, can be rewritten with new, safe moments over time. So how do you actually do that? Start with these 3 small steps. 1. Learn to be your own mirror. When sadness or loneliness creeps up, stop pushing it down. Don't tell yourself it's no big deal. Get over it. Pause and say the words you were starving to hear when you were 8 years old. This pain is real. What you feel makes sense. I'm right here. 2. Separate old habits from reality. A wounded brain is hyper-tuned to scan for rejection everywhere. When someone takes forever to reply or speaks in a flat tone, your chest tightens right up. In that exact moment, stop and ask yourself, are they actually rejecting me, or is an old habit just finishing the script on its own? 3. Practice asking, starting ridiculously small. Try ordering the exact food you want without adding, but whatever's fine. Ask a friend to pass a glass of water. When the world doesn't punish you for having needs, when people just help, your body starts learning a completely new definition of safety. And as you keep walking this path, you'll come across a realization that's painful but deeply freeing. Your parents, physically there, but emotionally absent, were almost certainly neglected kids themselves. Their signals went unanswered back then, too. They built up walls and called it a personality. They were handed a child to raise without ever being shown what it feels like to be held. They couldn't give you what nobody ever gave them. Understanding this isn't about letting them off the hook. Your pain is real. Your grief is real. But understanding it frees you from waiting on an apology that might never come. And most importantly, it means the chain stops right here. With you. Picture a moment somewhere up ahead. You come home after a long, exhausting day at work. Your head is still spinning with 100 different pressures. Suddenly, a little kid comes running up to you, holding out a messy crayon drawing or blabbering a silly story with no point and no beginning. Instead of just walking past them into the house, you stop. You set your bag down on the floor and you say, "All right, tell me everything." In that one ordinary moment, you've done something that maybe generations in your family never managed to do. You let a child know they were worth stopping for. If any of this touched a corner inside you that's been quiet for a long time, leave a comment down below. Which of those 4 masks were you? Go ahead and share it, because sometimes just a short line from you can help someone out there feel understood and a little less alone. This is Deep Shift. I'll see you in the next one.